Well, guys, I'm pretty excited about this podcast series we're just about to embark on. And I've got to say, firstly, a big thanks to our audience and our followers for partaking in the naming of the series, which we're pretty blown away with all of the names that came out, which was fantastic. So without further ado, and before we jump into this first episode, we are calling this Basically Speaking. Okay, so guys, now we've got that name sorted, I think we just get cracking straight into episode one, and we'll see how that goes. So I'm Shawn Godwin, Director of Base Architecture, and alongside me,
I'm Chris Kolker, the other Director of Base Architecture.
And I've got to say, one of Chris's awesome ideas for this podcast is to open it up with a pretty individual signature move that he has on the vault door here. There we go. So we're open. Well done, Chris. That was awesome. I think that was a little cringy, but I like it.
That felt really natural. Yeah.
And look, we have some notes here, and we'll go into a bit of an intro for Base and what this first one is about. But I think we probably need to put some drops in these glasses, I think. Yeah. Oh, what have we got here?
Sangiovese, Clare Valley,
Beautiful.
2022.
Chris's favourite.
Happy with that? Would you like a little taste?
Yeah. No, I'll just
pour it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so too.
Good sound too.
I'm into it.
Thank you.
Well, let's have a cheers anyway. Been talking about this for a little while, so we're going to get into it. So, as I said before, I think it is a bit about education. We're in a community here that we've been here now for, strangely enough, I said to Chris the other day, we're coming up to our 20 years. Technically, December this year, but we'll do something in the new year about it. But you know, Base has sort of served this community and the wider community, I think, really well over that period of time. I think we've seen a lot of clients, a lot of projects. I'm going to say it's in excess of 1,000 projects. And I know that sounds a lot, but it might be more.
No, I think I was looking at it at the start of this year, and I think we're at about 950 at the moment. So,
geez, it'd be cool, wouldn't it, if we could get to 20 years and have 1,000?
Getting close.
Yeah. And I think this idea of a vodcast's whole idea is we want to engage. We want to get not necessarily people's feedback. We want to help people make those steps, I think, in moving forward with a project, whatever sort of scale that might be. And a lot of that comes from communication. And for us, this episode, we want to talk about the start of it, right? And we'll go through the next 12 talking about some, really granular things about budgets and what each of our design stages are. But we want to make it a little bit fun along the way. We want to have guest speakers in. We want to have consultants we've worked with. We want to have, some friends that come in. We want to have some clients that come in to tell their stories as well. I think there's a lot of misconceptions in the industry, which we want to either confirm, deny, break down, investigate. And within the 12 episodes, and it's going to go over, a year, we'll probably have 2 live ones where we might even be in this establishment at Quincy's, which is under our office, and invite people along to kind of have a bit of a Q&A, which I think could be pretty cool. So I think maybe, what have I got on my notes here? What's our focus, do you reckon, moving forward? I'm putting you on the spot here because we haven't talked about this, but as I said, Chris has been, we're nearly 20 and Chris is sort of knocking on the door of 16 or so years. And we've seen, these sort of waves go through of ups and downs and ins and outs and different staff and different clients, and kind of analysing the data of what we've got there to see what works for us and also then what works for our clients. So I often ask myself, well, what is our focus? What do we want to do moving forward? Do we want to get bigger? Do we want to get smaller? Do we want to, all those sort of questions, which probably you do as well.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to see that over this time we've started out with a lot of fairly small projects. There was people's deck extensions and renovating their kitchen and that sort of thing. And we've designed a house for them or their workplace or something like that as well. So it's kind of interesting to see how that relationship has continued with these people over all of that time. So I think the kind of the next steps is it's going to be interesting to see how we kind of build on that even further, and how we continue to, I guess, keep involved with those with people's first projects. Like it's kind of the start of a relationship for a lot of these people. They've never worked with architects before. They talk to us, they trust us, and then they keep coming back to us. So I think that's kind of going to be the key to how we kind of keep doing more of what we're already doing.
It's kind of grassroots though, really, isn't it? Like, putting all analogies aside, I think as a business, and in our instance, architectural business, you got to go out on limbs every now and then, right? And we've made some really great decisions, and we've made some decisions that haven't worked out, but we realised pretty quickly, and we kind of can rein things back in. But I reckon for things that if we said, right, we want to go and try to focus on that sort of work, you don't just roll out on the street that day and they come to you. You got to work for it, and sometimes it hasn't worked out, and we analyse the data and see, well, what's a good return for us? There's obviously a business sense, but it's also about what's that clientele doing for us. And I think all of these ups and downs, we keep coming back to the grassroots of things. And for us, it's very bit cliche, but no job too small type of thing. And I think that's what makes us who we are. And I think you'd be crazy not to keep forging that. All right, well, I reckon we just kick into what this episode's about.
Well, I guess from my point of view, like a lot of what we're going to be talking about in this episode in particular, but also some of the other episodes to come, like we've gone out to a whole lot of people in the community over the past 20 years, and we meet with people like that. For a lot of people, we're the first people that they speak to about designing a home. So a lot of these conversations that we're about to have are conversations that we've already had, 1,000 times before, or even more with all of these people that reach out to us. So I think it's kind of good to kind of remember that this is not just something that we've just kind of put together in a bit of a hurry. This is actually kind of what we've learnt from what's important to people over all of these conversations in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
I think it's worthwhile remembering that as well.
Yeah. Good you say it, because I think in the last 20 years, it's like we've been, the squirrels gathering all their nuts going, right now, what do we do with it? How do we get that out? And I think that's really important. So this first episode now, right, we're going to talk about the general process. So I've got some notes written down here, and we can even capture it a little bit under what we call pre-design. So we're not even starting to talk about design. So we're talking about how do people reach us? What's our how do they get to us? Not talking about anybody else, but to us. So we'll call it the inquiry, right? Old school wise, phone call inquiry, which amounts to a certain sort of percentage. And some then are direct phone calls to myself and yourself because of return clients and so forth. But one of our bigger ones is our web presence, again, into that, the social media and our website and how that's built and curated and navigated and those sort of things. So a lot of our inquiries come through that way, and we can kind of read from even that early input who we're talking about and what we're talking about, and if they're novices at this and those sort of things. So we can kind of pinpoint that sort of thing, which I think is important as a start point, right?
So when you get that first inquiry from someone, what's the sort of thing that they're normally interested in finding out from you?
Oh, look, I think it is fair to say, and it can get asked a few ways, but it's about time and cost. I think without using words as to how they ask that, I think it's really important for people to understand, well, what sort of time is it going to take to procure this project? What sort of time is it going to take for them to collaborate with that? Because that's a really big thing, which we'll cover off on another episode. But we want all in, right? We want to be all into the project, and we want the clients to be, because the more we can do that and the more enthusiasm, that you'll get a better project. So I think, to answer your question, I think it is time and cost. That's the real first sign of our commitment and our communication. So what we go back to them with is what I believe is a really beautifully curated package of information without too much. Some of it's interactive, some they can click through, some they can read, and some they can just go, oh, wow, that's presented really well. And I think that's really important. So that inquiry is critical.
And so, and the sort of information that we're giving them back kind of relates a bit to budgets, timeframes, the work that we've done, and then trying to draw a bit more out of them about their brief and that sort of thing too.
Yeah. I think that interactive survey we've got is really good. Now, some people will do it straight away and they feel like they're already immersed in that, and they've been asked some questions about themselves and their children and their dogs and all those sort of interests, not just how many bedrooms do you want and da-da-da-da-da. So we want to not be robots. We want to treat every inquiry as it's like, it's someone's dream, right? And it's a bit of an honour to be asked to do that. And I think, with due respect to that, that's why we will always, the most common commentary we get back is, oh, wow, you got back to us so soon. It's because we've got a system that works really well. So I think you can have too much information, and we're always trying to get that right. So Chris, to round out the inquiry bit, I'll throw to you because
you've been talking too much.
And I actually want to hear from your perspective about inquiries and what you do, what we can do better.
Well, I think for me, the thing that I always find interesting is when we're first talking to a client, they don't really know what's important at that point in time. Like, for a lot of people, they've never done this before. As you've said, time and budget is kind of something that is something that they normally want to know. That's the most important thing. But for some people, they don't really understand. I mean, they don't understand a lot of what we do, but they also don't understand the things that we want to know from them. So, they ring up and they expect that it's quite easy for us to just give them the fee straight away. But for us, it's actually about kind of understanding what it is that's important to them. What sort of house do they like? Are they going to be happy with whatever we put on paper, or are they going to be really detail focused and trying to understand more about what it is that I guess what we do, and then how they can kind of feed off that to kind of further inform the design and that sort of thing. So I think that's probably the bit that it's a grey area. Like it can go a number of different ways, depending on who you're speaking to and that sort of thing. So I think that's probably the bit that is probably the biggest challenge, I think, in that first stage.
You got to flex a little bit, hey, and mold to that person.
Yeah. And they don't want to. So sometimes, we don't even know if they're speaking to other architects or anything like that. We might be the fourth person they've spoken to, and they're a little bit over, like repeating themselves and that sort of thing. I think it's interesting that just the ability to develop the rapport and actually listen to what's important to them before we've even put pen to paper or before they've even agreed to a fee and all that sort of stuff is a challenge, I think, for a lot of people, and probably a bit more confronting than what some clients would probably anticipate, I think.
But it does set the scene because we want it not to be confronting, but we want that real strong engagement. So you're trying to dig into their soul and everything, don't you? And you got a limited time frame to do it, hey? That initial inquiry, and that means could be over the phone or they've come in and you're laying it out, and you've got, I reckon you got 10 minutes to just get the read of the room and feel like there's some energy there.
That's right, because I guess they're also trying to understand the whole process. Not just in designing a house, but there's getting other consultants on board. There's like tendering with builders and getting DAs and all that sort of stuff. So we're trying to give them all that information. So
in a snapshot.
Yeah, it's a fine line between just overwhelming them with stuff and just giving them the information that they need to be kind of have the confidence to be able to go ahead with a project.
Well, it's the human side too. I think you could have a piece of paper and just lay it out and you go to do that. But if you had that all there and it looks ordered, but it might just be too, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. So you've got to use that little balance, don't you? And that's the human component to it, which, do you think that even from our staff perspective, that you use the word rapport, I think that's what we want to instill in all of all the base staff to be able to liaise with the clients on that ground as well.
Well, I think most people that we've got upstairs there, they, houses and renovations is, their bread and butter. It's the stuff they love. Yeah. They really enjoy teasing all these ideas out of clients to come up with probably their own cool house, but also, like the coolest house that they can for their client. So I think it's a good balancing act that, I think people are drawn to the projects that we do because of the staff that we've got, but also we've got the people that we've got because we get to work on these cool projects. So
it's kind of cool too sometimes. I think what we do well from our culture and our website perspective, all our staff are on our website. And we've had a few times where people are ringing up and they want to speak to a certain person because there's a little bit of a write-up on them and they might like certain types or things or interests that they go, oh, I'm gravitating to, I want to go speak to Abby or whatever that's going to be. I think that makes the difference. And we are not a bigger corporate, giant, right? We range from 12 to 18. And I think that's great. But I think that you get that real personal touch to it. Even to the point where we talked a little bit about phone inquiries. What do you reckon we'd get phone inquiries? It's not, there's probably more.
Not as much as what it used to be. I think there's probably a lot more web inquiries now that we get. I reckon there'd be a handful every week, I reckon.
So I'll ask you, so if you're ringing Base or someone and you're ringing in, and from my point of view, do you want to speak to an architect straight away? And you probably know they're not going to answer the phone. So what's the next best thing is, like, what do we have?
I guess the way it works for us is we've got so whoever answers the phone just tries to draw out as much information as they can out of whoever's called, and that comes down to I guess the type of house that they're looking for or renovation they're looking for. Get a bit of background information on the actual address so that we can go and have a bit of a look at it, and then that way when if you or I or whoever it is actually has time to get back to them, we've been able to do a little bit of extra research, so we can check a few things to see, is it going to need a DA? So we can actually start to give them information rather than asking them more questions. So I think people that are answering the phones actually know enough about what it is that because potentially it's a project that they'll be working on, so they know enough about the project to kind of get the key details, and then we can do our homework before we actually start approaching them.
One thing I'll say about that is, a lot of the time we have either someone on reception that's answering that phone call, right? And that's great. And there's a list of questions because they're not architects and we appreciate that. But I do love it when other people around the office, even from the second year student, that answer the phone. Because what to me that does, it's instilling what we want to do about unpacking people. If you're just going to sit there and not get a chance, an opportunity to do that. We've had some quieter people that said, oh, I don't want to do it. It's like, there's an opportunity here. You get to speak to a real person so that when they come in, you put a name to a face and a sound, and all of a sudden you're starting to leapfrog your own kind of career in some sense. So I think that's something that personally we do pretty well.
Even last week we had someone ring up about a new job. It was a renovation, and it was Lockie who answered the phone and took a few key details and passed them on to me to get back to them. And then once he realised I'd got back to them, he came over and he said, yeah, if when you're getting to go out and meet that person, can I tag along? I'm keen to be involved. So already he was kind of seeing that there was a cool project there that he could kind of get involved with.
Yep. Oh, and I always say to a lot of clients when we having those discussions, the size of our office and how open it is, don't feel like you're just employing me or employing you to do your project. You actually got all of the people in here. So it becomes a little bit like osmosis, and you kind of, got a cast of thousands working on your project, which is pretty good. Hey, we'll move on. Meet and greet. I've got the dot point as the next bit. So we've had the inquiry. We've kind of hopefully got the message across. So then what do? Do we get them in? Do we go to site? What do you like?
Particularly if it's a renovation, I like to get out to site.
Yeah.
I think when people are talking about the house that they've already got and what's working for them and what's not, it's actually really helpful to be able to walk around the house and for them to point out these things.
Yep.
So I find that a really useful, useful part of the process. New houses probably not so much when it's
not straight away, right?
When it's an empty site.
Well, you go and see a site and you can point and that's the sun and that's this and there's your neighbours. But I think you're right. Is it fair to say though, when we've got to that point, it's a stepping stone to it all. And this is how I think, is that we've given enough info based on costs and a bit of personality, and they've read a bit about us, and we've given them enough info that they've gone, we'd like to take the next step. We know that there's some fees involved and the time. So now, because we do all this for nothing. Yeah. We've always done it that way, and I think it needs to always be that way. Because I don't like the first bit to be just all about money. You have to touch on it because it works for us and it works for them. But I really want to get into is this the client and the project for us as much as it is. We just want to get that synergy, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's a fair thing for us to charge people
No.
to go out and work out if they want to work.
But they do.
Yeah.
It happens, and anyway. That's why we're a bit different. But but for us and Base, that's our opportunity to be putting our time and effort into someone's potential project. And they don't all come off, and that's fine. But we've always put our best step forward. But we'll learn more about that reno that you go out to see, right?
Yeah, and sometimes it takes ages. So we started a project recently, and it was kind of the third crack at getting the project up and running. I think I first started talking to this guy in about 2019, and then I think I talked to him again in about 2021 or something like that. And then it was only the third time. There was always a project there, and he always wanted it to happen, but there was a few ducks in the line that he just hadn't quite organised yet. So. But yeah, when we did actually get started, he was like, he said he always knew that he wanted us to work on his project because we listened.
Yep.
We just listened to what it was that he wanted, and he saw that we were kind of attentive and took him seriously. And it just took that long for him to actually get everything lined up, ready to go.
But you know what probably has happened in those 2 years? He's probably spoken to 50 other people and said, "Hey, we've been talking to these guys," and to me, like we're not. Yeah, great. Make an inquiry, pick up a job the next day, happy days. But it doesn't happen that way. And all that legwork that you put in is so valuable for that 2 years to come and all and sundry what's happened in there. And you might have said a couple of really insightful things that he's just thought about. And then by the time he's made that decision, he's like done the full due diligence. Yeah. And sometimes I say to you, "Oh, I spoke to this person 2 years ago," and they've just sent an email back going, "All right, ready to go," as though I just sent it to them yesterday. We have a bit of a chuckle about it, but at the end of the day, their time frame in there has just been all this soul searching and gathering and everything, whilst we've just been working away on other projects. And then it comes on and it's like, oh, cool, they're ready. And I think that's pretty important.
I think, again, it comes back to people not knowing the process, like so sometimes those first conversations just open people's eyes a little bit to all of the other bits and pieces that are going to need to be involved. And for whatever reason, they're not ready to take that on yet. But whether it's, just anything else happening in life, I suppose, like you're changing jobs or you didn't want to have to get all these other people involved, but you actually need a structural engineer and a town planner. And then when you kind of get your head around the enormity of the project, then you just, takes you a bit longer to kind of get ready for it.
It's a lot. There's a lot of links in the chain, hey? And I think, like, rounding that out is our job is to literally to join all them together. And we need them along the way. They don't need to join them themselves. And I think that's another thing that I find people like, oh, they feel like they've got to come with a plan or come with, oh, this is what I want the house. And that's fine. Everyone's a designer. I get it. And we want to pull that info out. But when we start going, hey, we'll look after that. We'll do that. We'll engage that person. We'll get that. And it's like, oh, you guys do that. I find that fascinating that, like, to me, I was like, well, that is what we do. But I often sometimes have to go, actually, that's a pretty fair call. Why would they think that we would do all of that? Because some of it's like they think, oh, well, I've got to go and organise the engineer.
Yeah.
And I think there's a sense of relief sometimes. Oh, sweet, I can go and spend time with my kids and go on holidays, and you just do that. It's like, yeah. It's kind of nice, and but all in all, in doing that, even going out on site, you're connecting, right? And you're getting the trust and the confidence and those sort of things, which I think is really cool. So done the meet and greet, you've been to site. In this instance, you talk about a renovation. Hopefully, and most of the times, clients are super happy. You leave site, you come back. Now you've got everything. What are we doing now? We're looking to personalise some sort of proposal.
So I guess each time we give a feedback to a client, it's tailored exactly for their project. So depending on, I guess, the scope of the brief, but also the scope of the services that they want from us.
Yep.
So if they only want that kind of initial concept, we can give them a fee for just that. Normally, we'd probably like to give them a fee for more or less the whole box and dice, and then they can kind of we itemise it down as well, so they can actually see what the fee would be if they wanted to take on the whole thing, but then it kind of can get pared back if that's not what they're up for. And yeah, we kind of do that in-house. It doesn't take us too long these days
because
anymore.
there's templates, right?
Yeah, and we've kind of taken the time to go back and have a look at enough projects to know how much time it takes us, and I guess that's an important thing as well. We write the fee based on how much time we've got to put into it. Like when budget's important for some things, but it's not important for the fee. It's some people just give you a fee and it's going to be a percentage of the budget, but for us it's actually just looking at, we think this is going to take us 200 hours to do this, so this is how much it's going to cost us, therefore that's what the fee is going to be.
In theory, not to the dollar or to the nitty gritty, but up to this stage, we've already communicated a bit about fees. Like there's a general guide, right? But I reckon what you've done, and in particular lately, and it was only because, well, it was because of a few things. We've gone through a few iterations of our proposals, right? And I always say we're creative people, but if I go back and look at some of our proposals from 15 years ago and the graphic and how we were presenting, I was like, that's not good enough. And there's different ways to do it.
And I think, again, we used to be overloading people, like there was a lot of information that would give them early on that would then be giving them again in the fee proposal. And it's kind of, it became a very, very heavy document to kind of wade through, whereas I think now it's a lot clearer, a lot simpler to read and understand, a lot clearer to people what it is that they would be up for if they choose to take us on. Just it's I guess the turnaround for us is a lot quicker as well. So we can actually get that back to people before,
I think that's important.
They don't have to wait.
A lot of people want that. And I'm not saying we make a rod for our own back. I always think it looks good. If I'm out there asking for a quote for something, I want it straight away because I've committed to doing that. So if we can deliver that, but I think what we do really well, we're very critical of our own work and of our own processes, and we're looking at what competitors are doing and all those sort of things. And I think whilst we're doing that, we're just trying to make ourselves better and better, and we're looking at more interactive type proposals. And I just think it's a great opportunity to, again, connect to the client and personalize it and make it all about them, and it's informative if they want to click a bit further and so on.
And make it as easy as possible for them, really. That's kind of the main thing.
So our proposal captures the enough of the nuts and bolts, and then we got to go into something that's probably a little drier in our client architect agreement.
Yeah.
But it's a bit of it's a necessary evil, right?
Yeah, and it's effectively all the terms and conditions. It's a much more generic, document that probably I'd guess most architects throughout Australia would be using. So there's not a lot of personality in it. So it's which is why we don't kind of lead with that.
Don't lead with it. That's right.
Because that doesn't really do a great job of communicating to people what's important to us. But again, like it's just a fairly straightforward document. Very rarely is it the sort of document that we kind of need to
invoke anything.
Yeah.
But I think it's like we're part of an esteemed body in the Institute of Architects, and we're obviously registered architects with the Board of Architects. And I think it is important that we do, albeit that we are a little bit more diverse in a few different ways in how we manage things. I think there's a point where and I even deliver it to some clients, and it's like, look, it's pretty much got all the stuff in it that our beautiful proposal has, but it's got a few legal terms in. Have a read of it, we'll discuss it. And I don't want to be flippant about it, but it's like, you got to have it out there.
The good thing about it is that it's a standard enough document that it's been checked by other lawyers,
the institute
lawyers and all that sort of stuff, so that it's there to protect clients as much as anything.
So and it covers off on insurances and the bits and pieces that, as you said, you hope that it gets signed, goes into the filing cabinet, the project happens, and everybody's happy, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So we've got a signed CAA, client architect agreement.
Yep.
As I said, gets slotted into the QA system that you have put together over the years. And so next is mobilising the project. This is the bit where we're like, right, how do we go? So what are the 3 points? What are the points that we do to kick that off?
I think the first thing is actually working out who in the office is going to be working on it. So we want people who basically have the enthusiasm for the project, the experience for the project, but also the time for it as well. So getting the right people ready to go on the project, because it's not just us that's going to be working on it. So there's a team of people on any project, and then there's also going to be external people as well. So in the early stages, there's probably going to need to be a surveyor, town planner, potentially involved as well. So it can be reaching out to them to start getting fee proposals, or even just ask them. We might be ringing the town planner to ask them questions about the site from their point of view before we even put pen to paper. And the other part is kind of just drawing as much information as we can out of the client. And that's probably the most important thing. So we do a lot of that in the early stages of that kind of pre-design, but it kind of really comes down to, we actually send out a whole lot of surveys, and just trying to understand as much as we can about what's important to the client. And the good thing about that is we've actually then, it's a survey that they can fill out. It can be sitting there on the desk next to us as we're sketching away. And everyone always forgets details, but when you've got them sitting there next to you, you can actually be kind of
like laundries and stuff.
Yeah. So you come up with a design, and then you're kind of flicking back to what they've said is important, and it's like, oh, you know what, they have they've got a dog, and it's a they need it to be able to live in this house, and then we've put a whole bunch of stairs in it that can't do stairs or something like that. So there's always kind of things like that that's, I guess, what makes the project fantastic for the clients, is that we've considered all of those things, but it's a very easy part of the process to kind of draw that information out and then actually just sit there and actually do something about it.
The dog one's an interesting one because we asked that quite early. We're a dog office, but people want to know their names and the ages and the breed of the dog, and it's pretty cool even in a first sketch design to be going through and, okay, there's your bed and your ensuite and the pragmatics of the program of what rooms they need to house the occupants of the house, right? Then there's the emotive side of it, which is the feel of it and where they holiday and what that feels like and those sort of things. And then you go, oh, and here's the little doggy door that comes out, not just the door, it comes out the wall, and we've got a little arch around it for Fido, and they kind of go, oh, geez, you picked that up. It's really important. Next thing, they're coming in for a meeting like this morning from Anthony Street, Rex comes in. And I was busy, and all of a sudden Rex is under my desk. It's kind of cool because they've now got confidence that they're bringing their dog into the office, which I think is pretty cool. So it's again unpacking all of that stuff that's in their head that a Pinterest image won't show, or a scrapbook of a holiday they had. It's discussion. So it's getting that down, getting it onto paper, having a scribble. And if we've got a team that you talked of, and I'll expand on that just a little bit, is that our team can be led by a director. There can be an architectural graduate or a technician, an interior designer in there as well. And they're all sitting around taking their own notes for their own disciplines. So then they'll break away, and the interior design team will start muddling around with, okay, well, their time and their program. And then they'll talk to the architects and join it along. It's not like we go, well, there's the architecture, now there's the interior. And I think there's a misconception that we'll talk about in another episode, but it's really cool that it's the architectural design is interiors, architecture, landscape, ideology about furniture and lighting. It's all and sundry. I'm surprised sometimes we have clients that say, oh, so for that budget, do we walk in and we have lights and paint on the wall? I'm like, who doesn't do that? But I don't know, maybe it's a misconception we don't even know about. So that's the mobilising of a project. And I think next step, I reckon, and this will be covered in future episodes, talking about, so the program be centred around major milestones of what we've just drawn out, right? And it'll talk about sketch design, design development, development applications, building approvals, energy efficiency, construction documentation, contractor selection and construction. We're not going to go into them today because there's like 10 more months of episodes, but that's what it is. So if you've heard all those words in those last few dot points and you want to know more, we can certainly expand on them, but they will be covered in future episodes. So we'll talk about a couple of other things in a second, but I want to thank my guest, who's clearly an in-house guest, a very good guest, very polished too, because Chris's early background in his early years. He actually held some sort of podcasty sort of thing, wasn't it? Before podcasts were a thing, was it a cooking show or
I
something?
believe it was pre-podcasts. Yeah.
Hidden talents.
Yeah, it was my radio cooking show, which is not a format that performs very well. But anyway, it was fun.
Well, it comes through in any cakes that we have to have, and there's a definite skill in there. So I think that's episode 1. Cheers.
Excellent.
I think I've drunk more than you and
Yep,
talked
I
more
better
than you.
finish
which
this
is
off
good.
and
Yeah. And do you want to close up the session? He loves this stuff. There it is.